To my MVC Sinatra project final for Flatiron School. Today I'm going to show you my bat researchers log. So this is just a very simple web application where bat researchers or anyone who's interested in bats can look at all bats that have been logged, create bats, edit them, and even delete them if they need to. One of the functions I wanted to have is that anyone can look at all of the bats and including individual bats. So I'll show you that right now. So even if you're not signed up or logged in, you can go to all bats. You can look at specific bats. You can't edit or delete that bat. Also, if you try to log a new bat, it will redirect you to login. So let's show how the whole process works with just signing up first. So we'll create a new account. And actually, real quick, I'll show you what happens if an associated email is already logged. So that email has already been taken, so we have our first error message, which I used RackFlash to create these error messages, and then Bootstrap for the styling. So let's try one without an associated email. Okay, and so there is our new account. And again, even if I'm logged in, I can't edit or delete someone else's bats. This wasn't created by this account, clearly, because I just created this account. I can also log a new bat now. Wanted to show another validation feature of this. So the tag or wing print number cannot have spaces. So say, for instance, I type in something, also can't have special characters. That's the only required field for this. So if I try and submit this, identification is invalid. Okay, so let's create, and also show you if it's the same existing bat, we'll get this similar error message. The identification has already been taken. Okay, let's create an actual new bat this time.
Ultimately, when we finish that, the next round will be going through everything that's in product planning and trying to figure out what we need to do to get to it. So I want to get through the older ones first, so that everything is.
Ideally, this would be a little bit more scientific, but just for the purposes of showing you. So our new bat has been created, and now you can see that with this bat, since we've created it, now the edit and delete options show up. If we go to edit, all of our fields are already filled in for us, and we can change things now. We also have a little message here saying that our bat has been updated. We can also delete this bat. And as you can see in recorded bats, that bat no longer exists. You can also go to your account and you can edit or delete your own account. I just wanted to show you if you go to someone else's account, the edit and delete buttons are not there. Also, if you try to hard code it, you're not authorized to make changes to this account, and it redirects you back to the root. And then let's see what happens if we try to go into their edit. Also doesn't let you make changes to that account. Also, if you do go to someone's bat and you try and do the same thing, you're not authorized to make changes. So in our account, let's go back. We can edit our account. The password is required to update anything, so let's change it to dot notation 1. Update account. Your account has been updated, and you can see that change reflected here. We can also log out.
It was injected a year ago and then not touched.
And let's log back in.
Christina is there.
Okay, we've logged back in, and if we go to our account, we can also delete our account. Are you sure you want to delete your account? Delete account. Your account has been deleted. We're sorry to see you go. And you can also, you can also see that that user no longer exists. Now let's go through the actual code itself. So, on the home screen, you can see in our view.erb, here's just a very, very basic home screen. The nav bar was made using Bootstrap, and that is in my layout, which is here. And you can see here's the nav bar. It does have conditionals. If you're logged in, you can go to your account. You can go to all bats. You can go to log new bat. Also, you can log out. If you're not logged in, you can only see sign up, log in, and all bats. This also is our error flash. So all those messages you saw coming up, those are also if statements, because I found out if you don't have the if statement, the color band associated with that just continues to be there. Then we have our yield statement. So this is starting where our actual view ERBs show up. So everything before that will always load. Same with everything below it. This is where our view files end up rendering. Also, I'll show you our database real quick. So our users table has a username, email, organization, password digest, and that's using bcrypt, and it makes sure that the password stays secure and it has salt added to it. I also put a timestamp, so that just shows when the account was created and then last updated. We can only see that in our SQL database. And for bats, we have a lot of different attributes for each bat because our user has many bats and our bat belongs to a user. Our bat needs a user ID, and that's why you see in our table user ID. We also have the timestamp function on this as well. The timestamp function can actually be seen on the individual bat's show page. So you can see here, updated at, and that's created through the timestamp function. And let's go back to our models. So our bat belongs to a user. We're using active record to create that association. I also used active record validations. So the only validation for a bat is that it must have the identification, which is this number you see up here. It's also called the tag or wing print number. Presence has to be there. It also has to be unique, and the format, I used regex, basically to just make sure that there are no white spaces and it's alphanumeric, no special characters, because I actually use that, as you can see up here, in the URL. So instead of creating a individual slug, I just used that number. Our user, again with active record, we are creating association that it has many bats. Also using validations, it must have a secure password. It validates that it has a username, that it's a unique username, and the length is a minimum of 5 characters. Email validates that it is present, that it's unique, and the format is also using regex. The extended version of the UR mailed to email regex is down here. Basically just make sure that things are alphanumeric, has an @ symbol. If it does not,
So we'll keep this in the backlog. Do you think it's still a must?
it should show us. We deleted this account, so let's try this. If we don't have an @ symbol here, please include an @ in the email address. So that's one of our validations in check, and I already showed you some of the other ones previously. Also validates that it has a password that is between 6 to 20 characters. Here I did create a slug, and so the username is downcase, and then any spaces that might be in it are replaced with a dash. And then we're going to be using the find by slug method in the user's controller. So user.all.find the user.slug equals slug. And we saw that earlier with here. You can see that that is a user's account name.
Okay. But it's not going to look nice.
Okay, let's go to our controllers. Let's start with our application controller. This is our main controller. As you can see in our config file, we always run the application controller, and then all of the children controllers, like our bat controller, users, sessions, and also the rack method override. This is how our program knows how to run, which also requires our environment file. And this is where we create our environment, require certain things that we need to run, also establish our database connection here. I also have the logger so I can see my SQL statements as I run my program. Here we're also setting our public folder, so this is where we store our images, so things like the icon and the background, they're all stored there. Also setting the route for my views, so every time when I do ERB, I don't have to do ERB app/views/welcome. Enabling sessions, and we're also setting the session secret, and I put mine in a .env folder here, and that's also in my git ignore, so that way no one knows that little secret. So basically what the controller does is it talks between the views and the models. The views are what the user interacts with, and that's how the user makes HTTP requests. And in the controller, you can see what all those requests are supposed to do. So for instance, our most basic one, which is our welcome screen. So if we go back to home, this is also our root. So it's a GET request because we're asking to get that page. So if we get the root do, we want to load our ERB, which is embedded Ruby. So it allows us to embed Ruby logic into our HTML. So you can see here, we don't really have any embedded Ruby in this one in particular, but we will in other views. I also put my helper methods here. So we have current user. This one is helpful. Most of these are for like validation purposes, also just trying to make sure people can't view certain things. This also includes our logged in method, redirect if not logged in, redirect if logged in.
I'm gonna cancel this one because we're doing a totally different thing here.
And let's start with our sessions controller because this one deals with our logging in and logging out functions.
Basically, if we go
So when we hit our login button here, we're making a GET request to get this page, which is our ERB sessions login. And then when we log in, we are making a post request because we want to start our session, essentially. Also, we don't want anyone who's already logged in to see that page. So that's why it starts with if logged in, redirect. So if I try to go to log in right now, it's going to redirect me back to our BATS page, as you can see here. Also, we'll do that for sign up. Okay. So for that post request, we redirected if logged in, which I just showed you. And then we want to find the user by our username. So that's our params user username. If you go to our ERB login, you can see that I have the nested form. So our class followed by that specific attribute.
Okay, because requests have changed since this.
And you can even see here in the form, it shows you that it is a post method. And then also log out. This isn't ever a GET request because it's not loading a view. This is just a hidden form, which actually is in our layout.erb because this is in our nav bar. You can see it here. Again, if logged in. So this is an example of our ERB tag in an HTML. And if it had an equal sign here, this would show up to the user. Without the equal sign, this logic is hidden to the user. And then we have our form action, log out. It is a post method, but it's actually a delete method, and that's why we have the rack method override. So the input type is actually hidden. So you don't see like a typical form. Like if we went to log new bat, this looks like a form. But the logout button here, that doesn't look like a form. It's a hidden form.
I mean, this is a client.
Okay. And so what actually happens is we're deleting that session of that user ID. And then when you've been successfully logged out, you have been logged out of your account, we hope to see you again soon. And then it redirects you back to login.
We're doing something totally different.
On our users controller, get sign up. We already saw that. If you're logged in, it's going to be redirect you. And if you're not logged in, we're going to show our user/new form, which you saw the physical form of that earlier. This is what it looks like. Again, it's nested. So the name equals is setting our attribute. So in our CLI, we had adder accessors. This is basically replacing that and auto-generating it for us in a way. So nothing's hard-coded. It's a lot cleaner. It's a lot easier to use.
Okay.
And because we signed up, we're making a post request and we're creating a new user with the params of user. This is a lot simpler than if we didn't have the nested name in our form, because then we would have to call out every single attribute, and especially for a bat, that's a lot of attributes. Also, if the user saves, and that is requiring that the user's parameters are all validated. So for instance, we saw this when I didn't have the @ symbol, or if the user existed. It's not going to save that user because it's not a valid user. And we saw that originally too with this flash error. The flash errors use rack flash, which we saw here in our configure statement in the beginning, also in our gem file, got our rack flash, and environment file that also has our rack flash there too. And this is also creating our session user ID. And we saw this earlier too. So this is where we use our slug. So we're getting that so we can see here we have our user /D Thielsen, which is our username, so that's using the slug. And if it's that user, we're going to show. And if that user doesn't exist, we saw that earlier, we were unable to find that user. Please try again.
Okay.
And we also saw this earlier, but the edit form will not show up the user is not authorized. This is a private method down here. It's basically just validating that the session user and the current user match. If they don't match, you're not authorized to make changes to this account, and you're redirected back to the BAT index page. Okay. And so when we do edit our account, that is a patch request, and it updates our user. And if that user is successfully updated, again, this is with our validations. If the username, the password, or the email are invalid, that user is not going to save, and you will get the error where you're using errors.fullmessage.join, because the errors are going to be unique to each situation, because there are multiple things that can go wrong. And if there are errors, it will take you back just to the edit page of that user. And if it is successfully updated, you're going to see that's been updated and you return to your account just normally. The delete function is also the same. And I actually wanted a delete page because I wanted to make sure that it wasn't accidentally hit and it couldn't be undone. So we have, again, it's a hidden form. As you saw, it was just a delete button. This action is permanent and cannot be undone. And that destroys the user and also deletes the session at the same time. Let's go to our bats controller, get bats. This shows all of our bats, bat.all, and loads our index. And I also put an if logged in statement here. So if you're not logged in and you go to all bats, you're not going to see your name here. It's just blank. And then recorded bats. Again, we're using our embedded ERB here. This is a perfect example. So as you can see here, we don't see the if logged in statement, but we do see our current user.username. And that's all by this little equal sign here. Changes all of that. And then each bat is a link and also has that bat's identification number.
Yes.
And we also have our button here. So when we want to log a new bat, that's our get request by pressing this button or in the nav bar here. It's our get request. We have our post request, so when we log that new bat, we're going to build that bat. We are using build because it doesn't automatically save. We want to make sure that that bat is valid before we just save it to the database. So if the bat saves, bat successfully created. Else, again, there could be multiple reasons why the bat wasn't saved, so we're just going to display that message for the user. And you can see here, we can also make GET request to a specific bat, and we're just using their identification. That's not a method, it's just a attribute of that bat. And also you can see here that both the edit and the delete have the bat authorization. And again, just like in the user, we're finding that bat and making sure that the bat user ID is also equal to the session user ID. But another thing I did just to not confuse anyone is in the show page of each bat, the buttons are if statements. So if you're logged in and the current user ID equals the bat user ID, then those buttons will show, otherwise they won't. See here, there's no buttons. But if we go to my bat, those buttons show up. And unlike our user delete function, there is no GET request to bat/delete because it is a hidden form and there is no actual page to get and have the user view for that. There's no confirmation on this one. And that is my Bat Researchers Log MVC Sinatra final for Flatiron School. I hope you enjoyed looking at my log.